email came on a Tuesday morning and I almost didn't open it. I was half awake, still in my pajamas, scrolling through my phone while my coffee brewed. The subject line said it was from First National Credit Union. I figured it was one of those promotional emails. A credit card offer. A rate update. Something I'd delete without reading. But something made me stop. Maybe it was the word urgent in the subject line. Or maybe it was some sixth sense I'd developed after years of being the only person in my family who actually read the fine print on things. I opened it. Dear Miss Reeves, this is a formal notice regarding delinquency on your business loan account ending in 7741. 3 payments have been missed. The current outstanding balance is $247,000. Please contact us immediately to avoid further action. I read it 3 times. Then I sat down on the kitchen floor because my legs stopped working. I don't have a business loan. I have never had a business loan. I am a 31-year-old middle school science teacher with a studio apartment in Columbus, Ohio, a used Honda, and a savings account I built dollar by dollar over 8 years because nobody in my family ever taught me how money worked. I had to learn that myself, from library books and YouTube videos and making mistakes I couldn't afford but made anyway. A $247,000 business loan was not something I had. Except, according to First National Credit Union, it was. I called the number at the bottom of the email before my coffee even finished brewing. My hands were shaking. I remember that clearly, the way the phone felt slippery in my palm, the way I had to press it hard against my ear to make sure I didn't drop it. The woman on the line was patient. She asked me to verify my name, my social security number, my date of birth. I did. She pulled up the account. She told me the loan had been opened 18 months ago. She told me the registered business name was something called Holloway Home Renovation LLC. She told me the primary borrower was listed as me. I didn't open this account, I said. I understand this may be distressing, she said, in the careful tone of someone trained to stay neutral. I'd strongly recommend you come into a branch in person with your ID and file a fraud dispute. We can begin an investigation. I hung up and sat there in my kitchen for a long time. Then I called my brother. Not because I suspected him right away. That would come later. I called him because he was the only family member I had in Columbus. My parents live 4 hours away in a small town outside of Dayton. My brother, he'd moved to Columbus 2 years ago, crashing on my couch for 3 months before he found his own place, a rental on the east side he shared with 2 roommates. We weren't close in the way siblings on TV are close, but we were cordial. We texted sometimes. He came over for Thanksgiving when he didn't have other plans. His name is, well, I'll call him my brother, because that's all he is to me now. That's all he'll ever be. He didn't answer. I texted him, hey, call me when you get a chance, it's important. No reply. I looked up Holloway Home Renovation LLC online. It took me about 4 minutes to find it. A basic business registration, filed with the state of Ohio 18 months ago. The registered agent was listed as my brother's old roommate. The business address was an apartment on the east side of Columbus. My brother's apartment building. I remember the exact moment the floor dropped out from under me. I was standing in my kitchen, still in my pajamas, and the coffee I'd finally poured was going cold on the counter. I looked at my own name on that business registration, listed as a co-borrower, a silent partner, someone who had allegedly provided collateral, and I felt something I don't have a good word for. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just anger. It was the specific, nauseating feeling of realizing that someone who knew you, who knew your social security number and your birthday and your mother's maiden name and every piece of identifying information that makes you you, had used all of that against you, quietly, while you were teaching 8th graders about the water cycle and making your car payments on time and believing that you were building something. I checked my credit score that morning for the first time in 2 months. It had dropped 190 points. There were 3 credit inquiries I didn't recognize. There was the First National loan. There was a second loan, smaller, $40,000, from an online lender, also listed under my name and the same LLC. There was a credit card with a $15,000 limit opened 6 months ago, with a balance of $14,800 on it. I sat down again. I thought about the last time I saw my brother in person. It had been Christmas, at my parents' house. He'd seemed stressed, distracted. He'd asked me at some point if I'd ever thought about investing in real estate. I'd laughed and said I could barely afford my rent. He'd changed the subject. My mother had made a comment about how he was thinking big and had some projects in the works, and I'd nodded and eaten another piece of pie and not thought about it again. I thought about it now. I thought about the fact that 2 years ago, when he stayed on my couch, I'd helped him set up a bank account because he'd just moved and needed a local address for the paperwork. I'd handed him my documents to make copies. I'd trusted him in my home, around my things, around the folder of important papers I kept in my filing cabinet because I was an organized person who believed in having things in order. That folder had my Social Security card in it. I'd never thought to lock it. I went to the credit union in person that afternoon. I brought my passport, my actual Social Security card, which was still in my possession, meaning he'd copied it without taking it, my pay stubs, my lease, my tax returns. I brought a folder full of documentation proving that I was who I said I was and that I had not opened a business loan in a strip mall renovation LLC on the east side of Columbus. The fraud investigator, a calm, methodical man who reminded me of the vice principal at my school, took everything I gave him and told me they would begin the investigation immediately. He put an alert on my account. He walked me through freezing my credit with all 3 bureaus right there in his office, on his computer, while I sat across from him and tried to keep my breathing even. He told me the investigation could take 30 to 90 days. He told me to file a police report. He told me to document everything. I drove home, went straight to my filing cabinet and took photographs of every document I owned. Then, I called the Columbus Police Department and filed an identity theft report. The officer on the phone was matter-of-fact efficient. She asked me if I had any idea who might have done this. I paused. I have a suspicion, I said, but I want to gather more information first. That night, I finally heard from my brother. He texted me back at 9:43 p.m. The text said, "Sorry, crazy day. What's up?" I didn't respond right away. I sat with my phone in my hand and thought about what to say, and then I thought about the $247,000 loan with my name on it, and the $14,800 credit card balance and the 190-point drop in my credit score, and I put my phone face down on the couch and went to bed. I didn't sleep. The next day, I called my parents. I should explain something about my family because it matters. My brother is the younger one by 4 years. My parents, my mother especially, have always had a different relationship with him than they have with me. He's charming in a way I never was. He's funny and easy and people like him immediately. When we were growing up, he could talk his way out of anything. A missed curfew, a bad grade, a borrowed car he returned with a dent in the bumper. My mother would sigh and ruffle his hair and call him her handful in a tone that made it clear she didn't really mean it as a criticism. I, on the other hand, was the responsible one. The one who got scholarships. The one who called home every Sunday. The one who showed up. I don't say this to make myself sound noble. I say it because it's the truth, and it's the context. When I told my mother what had happened, starting from the email, the credit union, the police report, the list of fraudulent accounts opened in my name, she was quiet for a long time. "Are you sure?" she said finally. "Am I sure that someone opened a $247,000 business loan in my name without my knowledge?" I said. "Yes, Mom, I'm sure." "Well, maybe there's been some misunderstanding," she said. "You know how your brother gets ideas? Maybe he thought he had your permission somehow." I let that sit in the air for a moment. "He didn't have my permission," I said. "I never gave him permission. I didn't know anything about this until yesterday." Another silence. "You should talk to him," she said, "before you do anything drastic." Drastic. Like filing a police report about $250,000 of fraud committed against me was drastic. "I already filed a report with the police, Mom," I said, "and a fraud dispute with the credit union." The silence that followed was different, thicker. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "He's your brother." I didn't say anything. "We can figure this out as a family," she said. "These things don't have to go through the courts. He's going through a hard time. His business was struggling. He just needed some help getting started, and he probably thought—" "Mom," I said, "he used my identity. He forged my signature. He opened $250,000 in loans and a credit card in my name and didn't tell me. My credit score dropped to 190 points. I can't buy a house now. I can't do anything now. You're being very dramatic, she said. I hung up. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment complex for 20 minutes. It was a cold Wednesday in March. The sky was that flat gray Ohio gray that makes you feel like the sun has permanently relocated somewhere more interesting. I watched a pigeon investigate a discarded fast food bag near the dumpsters, and I thought, very clearly, I am on my own here. My brother finally called me that evening. I answered. Hey, he said. His voice was careful in the way voices get when people are about to try to manage you. Mom called me. She said you were upset. I found out about the loan. I said, the LLC, First National. A beat of silence, just long enough to tell me everything. Look, he said, I can explain. Please do, I said. What followed was a 40-minute conversation that I now think of as the most clarifying conversation of my life. Not because it excused anything, but because it removed every last illusion I had about who my brother was and how much he valued me. He explained that the renovation business had been his idea for years. He'd always wanted to flip houses. He'd found a partner, the roommate, who knew contractors. They'd had a property lined up, a foreclosure they'd found through an investor connection. But the bank wouldn't give them the loan on their own because neither of them had sufficient credit history or collateral. His credit score was in the low 600s. His partner had even less. Mine, at the time, had been 761. So he'd used mine. He'd found the documents when he stayed on my couch, my social security card, a utility bill, my pay stubs from the previous year, which I'd apparently left in the filing cabinet along with my tax returns. He'd taken photos of everything. He had enough to present himself to a lender as me, as a co-borrower, as someone backing the venture with solid credit and documented income. He told me this in a tone that was somewhere between sheepish and defensive, like he was confessing to borrowing a sweater without asking. I always planned to pay it back, he said. The business was supposed to take off. We had 3 properties lined up. It would have all been fine. But it wasn't fine, I said. No, he said. The first property had foundation issues. We sold at a loss. Then the market shifted. Then Kevin, the partner, he had some personal problems and left the business. It kind of fell apart. And the payments stopped. Yeah. For 3 months. Yeah. And my credit score dropped 190 points. I know, he said. I'm sorry, I really am. But, look, I was going to tell you. I just needed a little more time to figure out how to fix it. You were going to tell me when? He didn't answer that. Mom thinks we should handle this as a family, he said instead. She said maybe you could. I mean, if you could just hold off on the police report, if you could work with the credit union too. To what? I said. Take on your debt? Just give me time to get the payments caught up. I can. You don't have $247,000, I said. Not right now, but. You don't have $40,000. You don't have $15,000. You used my credit to borrow $250,000, and you don't have any of it to give back. Silence. This is your family, he said. It came out quietly, like he was testing whether the words still worked. I'm your brother. We're supposed to help each other. And there it was. I'd been waiting for it, some part of me. That word, family. The way people deploy it like a shield, like a get-out-of-jail-free card, like the fact of a shared bloodline should override the fact of a crime committed against you. I know you're my brother, I said. I also know that you forged my signature on a loan application. Those 2 things are both true at the same time. So you're just going to destroy my life, he said. His voice had shifted. The sheepishness was gone. Something harder had taken its place. You're going to send your own brother to prison over money. I didn't do anything, I said. You did. Mom is devastated, he said. Do you know how this is going to affect her? She's all ready. I have to go, I said. Please, he said. Just think about it. Just. Good night, I said. I ended the call. I didn't cry. I thought I'd expected to, somewhere in the back of my mind. But I sat there with my phone in my hand and the apartment quiet around me, and I just felt very clear, like the air after a thunderstorm, when everything is washed clean and the pressure has finally changed. I did not hold off on the police report. I did not call the credit union to ask them to work with my brother's payment schedule. I did not absorb the debt. I did not handle it as a family. Instead, I did exactly what you're supposed to do when someone steals your identity. I filed the dispute with all 3 credit bureaus in writing, with my police report number attached. I sent the fraud documentation to the credit union, the online lender, and the credit card company. I called a consumer protection attorney and had a 30-minute consultation, which was free, which I didn't know was something you could get until I Googled it. The attorney confirmed that what my brother had done constituted identity theft and fraud, multiple felonies, and that cooperating with the investigation was not only my right but arguably my legal obligation. My mother called me 4 times over the following 2 weeks. I answered twice. Both conversations were variations on the same theme. I was tearing the family apart. I was being unforgiving. I didn't understand how hard my brother's life had been. I had always had it easier. I needed to think about what this would do to him. On the second call, she said something I thought about many times since. "You've always been the strong one," she said. "We never had to worry about you. Your brother needs more support. He always has." And that, I said, is exactly the problem. She didn't understand what I meant, or maybe she did and didn't want to. I stopped answering after that. The credit union completed their investigation in 41 days. They confirmed fraud. The fraudulent loan was removed from my account. The online lender followed within 2 weeks after receiving my police report. The credit card company took 6 weeks but ultimately ruled in my favor as well. My credit score recovered over the next several months, slowly in increments, the way trust rebuilds when it rebuilds at all. By late summer, it was back in the 730s, not quite where it had been, but climbing. The police investigation was its own process, separate and slower. I gave them everything. The documentation the credit union sent me, the photos I'd taken of my files, the phone calls I'd recorded after doing a quick Google search to confirm Ohio was a one-party consent state. My brother's voice, explaining the whole thing to me in that careful, sheepish, managing tone, was on those recordings. I handed them over. I don't know exactly what my brother felt when the detective called him. I wasn't there. I only know what happened because my aunt, my father's sister, the only person in my extended family who called me to say she was sorry for what I'd been through, told me secondhand. He had gone pale. He'd sat down very suddenly. He'd asked if he could call a lawyer. Good, I remember thinking. Good. He eventually entered a plea agreement. I won't go into the details because honestly, some of it is still making its way through the system and I've learned not to attach my sense of closure to outcomes I can't control. What I know is that there are consequences. Real ones. The kind that can't be renegotiated at a family dinner or explained away with the right tone of voice. My parents didn't call me for 3 months after the plea agreement was announced. When my mother finally reached out, she sent a text, not a call, a text that said, "I hope you're happy now." I thought about that for a long time. Happy wasn't the right word. Happy wasn't even in the neighborhood of what I felt. What I felt was something harder to name. A compound of grief and relief, and the strange, specific sadness of understanding that some relationships were never what you thought they were. That the person you'd grown up calling your brother had looked at you, at your discipline, your credit score built from nothing, your life carefully assembled against all the odds of the family you came from, and seen a resource to exploit. That your mother, told the full truth of what he'd done, had asked you to protect him anyway. Happy, no. But there was something else underneath all of it. Something quieter. It took me a while to identify it. It was the feeling of having held the line, of having looked at the pressure, the phone calls, the guilt, the he's your brother, and the we're family, and the you're being so dramatic, and having just not moved, not because I was cold or because I didn't love them, but because I understood something they didn't or wouldn't, that protecting yourself is not the opposite of loving your family. That being the strong one doesn't mean you exist to absorb everyone else's consequences. That there is no relationship, no title, no shared childhood, no blood, that entitles someone to your identity, your credit, your future. I bought a plant for my apartment that fall, a big leafy thing that sits on the windowsill and catches the afternoon light. I don't know why, but it felt significant at the time. like a small, living proof that I was still building something. That, what had been taken from me, hadn't taken everything. I froze my credit with all three bureaus. It's still frozen. I check my accounts every week, a habit I now do without thinking, like locking my door when I leave in the morning. I am more careful now than I was before. Not paranoid, careful. There's a difference. Before, I trusted the people closest to me with the parts of my life that mattered. Now I understand that love and trustworthiness are different things, and that you can feel both for a person while only actually extending one. I don't know what my brother's life looks like now. I don't ask. I know what mine looks like. It looks like waking up on a Tuesday morning, making coffee that actually goes hot because nobody needs anything from me yet, and sitting in the quiet of a life that is entirely, completely, irreversibly my own. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. There's a version of this story where I stay quiet, where I absorb it, where I tell myself that keeping the peace is the same thing as keeping the family, and I swallow the $247,000 and the 190-point drop and the years it took me to build that credit score, and I just move on. I've thought about that version a lot. I understand why it's tempting. It would have been easier in the short term. It would have kept my mother from sending me that text. It would have kept the holidays from going silent. But here's what I've come to understand about the way things actually work. Not in theory, but in practice. In real life. In the life I have actually lived, actions don't disappear. They compound. Every choice my brother made, the first time he photographed my social security card, the first signature he forged, the first payment he missed and said nothing. Each of those choices created the next one. And every choice I made in response to call the credit union, to file the report, to hand over those recordings, those compounded too in a different direction. Toward something solid. Toward something that was actually mine. What I know now is that doing the right thing and doing the hard thing are often the same thing, and the gap between knowing that and actually acting on it is where most people get stuck. I got stuck there too for a moment. I sat on my kitchen floor and I thought about my mother's voice and my brother's sheepish tone and whether I was being too rigid, too cold, too dramatic. I felt the pull of it, that familiar gravity that says, "You're the strong one, you can absorb this, it's just family." But strength was never supposed to mean that. Real strength, the kind that actually holds, the kind that doesn't erode over time, it comes from knowing where you end and where other people's choices begin. It comes from being honest enough with yourself to call a thing what it is, even when the people who love you are asking you to call it something else. And the intelligence piece, the part I'm most grateful for now, is that I didn't just feel my way through this. I learned. I Googled one-party consent laws at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday. I found out that consumer protection attorneys offer free consultations. I froze my credit in a fraud investigator's office on a Tuesday afternoon, and I learned in real time that there were systems designed to protect me if I was willing to use them. Information is not passive. Knowing things is how you protect yourself. I wish someone had told me that earlier. I'm telling you now. I think about my brother sometimes, not with anger anymore, mostly with a kind of sad clarity. He had the same parents I had. The same childhood, the same house, the same starting point, but somewhere along the way he learned that there would always be someone to catch him, someone to absorb the cost of his decisions. That lesson didn't come from nowhere. My parents taught it to him, quietly, consistently, every time they called him their handful in that fond, forgiving tone. Nobody taught it to me. I had to learn the opposite, that no one was coming to catch me, and for a long time I thought that was the harder inheritance. Now I think it was the better one. The plant on my windowsill is bigger now. It needed repotting last month, and I did it myself, carefully, with fresh soil and a pot that gave it more room to grow. I don't know why I keep coming back to that image. Maybe because it's the simplest version of what I've been trying to say. Some things need space and good conditions and consistent attention to become what they're supposed to be. You can't rush it. You can't borrow someone else's roots. You just tend to what's yours and you let it grow.